for short, and this is Learn with Erin. Today, we're going to talk about spring flowers and their pollinators. Did you know that not all flowers are pollinated by bees? Some are even pollinated by flies, and we'll talk about that today. We'll also talk about some ways that you can save the planet by keeping all of these plants super safe during the springtime.
Hello friends! So this is Trillium. This is one of my favorite spring flowers. Trillium starts with T-R-I, just like triangle, which has 3 sides. And Trillium has 3 leaves, 1, 2, 3, and 3 petals, 1, 2, 3. And it also has 3 sepals, which are these green parts outside of the petals. And so when this is in a bud, before it blooms, the sepals protect the petals so that they don't get damaged. And then it opens up, presenting the petals to attract pollinators. And this Trillium is primarily pollinated by bees. And so a lot of times there's queen bumblebees that'll come pollinate them, because that is what bees are out and about so early in the season. So really beautiful and one of my favorite spring blooms. So this is actually another Trillium plant, but it looks a little different than the white Trillium we saw before. It's got this purplish reddish color, and they're a lot smaller. The flowers are a lot smaller. The white ones, the flowers are like this big, and these ones are pretty tiny. And there's also a couple other differences that we should talk about with this redder Trillium. And so one of them is that these flowers don't actually produce nectar because they're not trying to attract bees to pollinate them. They actually produce a really foul scent that smells like dead animals. And so if you've ever seen an animal on the side of the road, like roadkill or something like that, you might have seen some flies buzzing around it. That's actually what these plants are trying to imitate to attract flies and sometimes beetles to pollinate them. So there's lots of different ways that plants try to attract their pollinators. And here we see by scent, and also this dark reddish color is also a way that it's trying to attract pollinators. So these are violets, and they're all over in the springtime. They're really pretty colors, and they have these like stripes on the inside and a little like fuzziness in the middle. And they come in different colors. Even though they're called violets, they're not just violet. They also have this white color with this purple coloring on top. They also have these heart-shaped leaves. Violets are super fun. Definitely a spring thing. Hey friends! So we found something super special in the woods. This is red columbine, and the scientific name is Aquilegia. And this is just a really beautiful red flower. They also could be like blue. You could see them in blue. You can find them in the wild. You can also find them planted in a lot of gardens. They really like this rocky, kind of rocky areas. So you can find them a lot of times on the sides of cliffs. Anywhere there's where there's kind of rocks, not as like much soil, kind of at like an angle too. They are really good at growing like that. And so if you look at that, this is like a really weird flower, and it has these big like tubes structures at the back, and these are actually called nectar spurs. And if you look inside, they give pollinators access to these nectar spurs, but not all the pollinators can reach the back of the spur back here if they're sticking their tongues in here. So bees have a really hard time pollinating these plants or getting any nectar from these plants. So mostly these kind of flowers are pollinated by things like birds, or maybe a butterfly that has a really long tongue, which is also called a proboscis. So that is a super, super special plant and a really fun example of something that's not pollinated by bees. Now we also have here a violet. that is an example of a violet that's not actually the color violet. This is a yellow violet. So again, like we saw before, we have these heart-shaped leaves. They're really soft, and this fun shape with some like lines in the center of the flower, but it's bright yellow instead of violet or white. So really exciting stuff. So happy we found these friends. So this is a super fun spring find. They're a little tricky to spot in the woods, but this is Jack in the Pulpit. Jack in the Pulpit have these leaves with 3 leaflets. So leaflet just means that they're little parts of the leaf. So it's one big leaf with 3 leaflets. And there's a bunch of them here. And they're hard to spot because this looks like it's a green leaf. So you just see a bunch of green. But if you peek inside, it's really, really beautiful. And it has these dark purple and white stripes inside. And this is a really cool plant. It has this really funky shape. And so this is actually called a spathe. And then this pointy thing inside is called a spadix. And so if you have a peace lily as a houseplant, they have the same thing. It has a spathe and a spadix. And this is where pollination happens. And these are actually pollinated by flies. So just like we saw with the red trillium, these darker colors, not like bright and fun, like bright reds and yellows. It's kind of like this deeper purplish color. Definitely a big attractant for flies.
Hi everyone! So this is how you can save the planet while you're exploring the outdoors. So there's lots of trails to walk on, lots of nature trails. However, it's really important that you stay on these trails. The trails are for people to walk on, and if you step off of the trails, you risk trampling the plants, the flowers, the ferns, the insects, the animals that live there. Alright, so a lot of the flowers that we saw today are really special spring wildflowers. So you definitely don't want to damage them or pick them. However, there are some flowers like dandelions that it's okay to pick sometimes because they're weeds. Alright friends, one last thing before you go, I have a challenge for you this week. And before next week's video comes out, I would love for all of you to go outside and take a picture of something that you find in the wild and send it to me at ask.learnwithern@gmail.com, along with any questions you have about this video, about plants, mushrooms, bees, butterflies, anything like that. Send your questions my way and we'll answer them on the next video.